Hi St. Vincent's friends and families. I'm gonna try something a little different. This is geared more toward the teenagers, but the little kids could participate in this as well. I was gonna start reading a chapter book, Magic Treehouse number 10, Ghost Town at Sundown. So I was gonna read the first 2 chapters, and then after chapter 1, I have 2 questions I'm gonna ask, and then after chapter 2, I'm gonna ask another 2 questions, and give you 2 choices of the answers, and you could use whatever you use for your yes or no's to answer the questions with mom and dad or whoever you're hanging out with, grandma, grandpa, friend. Your communication devices you could use, or if you do head nods, my son does head nods. If you use your voice, yes and no, just something new to try, something different. The chapter books don't really, they have a couple pictures but not many, but when there is a picture I'll definitely show it to you. So this is going to be Ghost Town at Sundown. So I'm going to do 2 chapters tonight. All right, chapter 1. Here's a nice picture. Ooh. And again, these are Magic Treehouse chapter books. The first chapter is called How Wild. All right, Jack and Annie were sitting on the porch of their house. Annie was gazing down the street at the Frog Creek woods. Jack was reading a book. I have a feeling we should check the woods again, said Annie. Why, said Jack without looking up. A rabbit's hopping by, said Annie. So, we've seen rabbits before. Not like this one, said Annie. Oh, look at them hanging out on their front porch. See the bunny? Wonder what's going on. What do you mean? Jack stood up and looked with her. He saw a rabbit with very long legs hopping down the street. Soon the rabbit left the sidewalk and headed into the woods. He's a sign, said Annie. A sign of what? Said Jack. That Morgan's back, said Annie. She jumped off the porch. Come on. But what about dinner? Jack said. Dad said it would be ready soon. Don't worry, said Annie. You know when we leave in the treehouse, time stops. When we leave in the treehouse, time stops. She ran across the yard. Jack pulled on his backpack. Back in 10 minutes, he called through the screen door. Then he followed Annie. They hurried down their street and into the Frog Creek woods. The sun was setting above the trees. There it is, said Annie. The rabbit was hopping in a ray of sunshine. When he saw them, he took off. Jack and Annie followed the rabbit until he vanished behind the tallest tree. I told you, see, said Annie, panting. She pointed up at the tree. Morgan Le Fay was waving to them from the Magic Treehouse, high in the branches. Jack and Annie waved back to her. As always, Jack was very happy to see the enchantress librarian again. Come on up, she called. Annie and Jack started up the rope ladder. They climbed up to the treehouse. We followed a strange rabbit here, said Annie. Is he your friend? Perhaps, said Morgan. He smiled mysteriously. I have many odd friends. Including us, said Annie. Morgan laughed. That's right. How are you, said Jack. I'm still having problems with Merlin, said the enchantress, which leaves me little time to do my real work. But soon the both will become master librarians, and that will be a big help to me. Jack smiled. He was going to be a master librarian who traveled through time and space. It was almost too good to believe. Are you ready to solve another riddle, said Morgan. Yes, said Jack and Annie together. Good, said Morgan. First, you'll need this for research. Ooh, it's getting good, guys. She pulled a book from her robe and handed it to Jack. It was the book that would help them on their journey. The title of the book was Days of the Wild West. On the cover was a picture of a western town on a prairie. Oh, wow, said Annie. The Wild West. Jack took a deep breath. Just how wild. he wondered. Morgan reached into the folds of her robe again and pulled out a scroll. She handed it to Annie. "Read this when the treehouse lands," she said. "Is it the riddle?" asked Jack. "Yes," said Morgan. "Then you only have 2 more to solve. Are you ready to go now?" Sorry guys, no pictures again. Jack and Annie nodded. Annie pointed to the picture on the cover of the Wild West book. "I wish we could go there," she said. The wind started to blow. "Goodbye," said Morgan. "Good luck." The treehouse started to spin. Jack squinted his eyes shut. The treehouse spun faster and faster. Then everything was still. Absolutely still. Jack opened his eyes. Morgan Le Fay was gone. A fly buzzed around his head. All right, that's the end of chapter 1. So the first question is going to be, who did Jack and Annie follow to the tree house? Was it a snake? Yes or no? Or was it a strange rabbit? Yes or no? That's question 1. You can use your yeses and nos, however you use them, to answer which one you think it is for mom and dad or whoever you're hanging out with. Question number 2. What was the title of the book they were given? Is it number 1, Days of the Wild West? Yes or no? Or Starry Nights? Yes or no? All right, those are the 2 questions for chapter 1. Now on to chapter 2. Let's see what's gonna happen. It's called Rattlesnake Flats. Let's see. The air was hot and dry. Jack and Annie peeked outside. The treehouse had landed in a lone tree on a prairie. The sun was low in the sky. Right in front of them was the town from the cover of the book. In real life, it looked empty and spooky. To one side of the town was a patch of ground with several tombstones. "That's creepy," said Annie. "Yeah," said Jack. He took a deep breath. "What's our riddle say?" Annie held up the ancient scroll. She unrolled it. Then she and Jack read together. There's a nice picture for you. Let's see what the scroll says. Ooh. Out of the blue, my lonely voice calls out to you. Who am I? Am I? Jack pushed his glasses into place and read the riddle again to himself. Out of the blue, my lonely voice calls out to you. Who am I? Am I? Well, I didn't hear any voices now, Annie said as she looked out the window. There were no human sounds at all, only the buzzing of flies and the whistling of the dry wind. Let's look at the book, Jack said. He opened the book. The pages were yellow with age. He found a page of the town and read the words beneath it out loud. Let's see. In the 1870s, Rattlesnake Flats was a rest stop for the stagecoach that carried passengers from Santa Fe, New Mexico to Fort Worth, Texas. When the creek dried up, everyone left. By 1880, it was a ghost town. Wow, a ghost town, said Annie, her eyes wide. Let's take a quick look around, said Jack, so we can leave before dark. Right, said Annie. Let's hurry. She started down the rope ladder. Jack put the old book into his pack. Then he followed Annie down the ladder. They stood by the tree and looked around. Tumbleweeds blew across the dry ground. Suddenly, something jumped past them. Yikes, they both said. Wonder what it was. But it was just a rabbit. A lone, long legs hopping past them. Hey, he's just like the rabbit we saw at home, said Jack. Yeah, that rabbit must have a sign of things to come, said Annie. The rabbit hopped across the ferry and out of sight. Across the prairie, sorry. Across the prairie and out of sight. I'd rather take notes, said Jack. He reached into his backpack and took out his notebook and pencil. He wrote, rabbits with long legs. What's that sound, said Annie. What sound, asked Jack. That rattling sound, said Annie. Jack looked up. What? He said. There! Annie pointed to a rattlesnake. It was about 100 feet long. It was coiled up and rattling. Jack took one look at the snake and ran. Our snake's shadow is not scary. No. No, you won't run from him. No. He's sweet. Jack took one look at the snake and ran. Annie ran too. They ran past the graveyard and ran into the ghost town. I guess that's why this town is called Rattlesnake Flats, said Annie when they stopped. Jack looked around. The town was hardly big enough to call a town. There was no unpaved street and a few old buildings. It was quiet, too quiet. Look, a store, said Annie. She pointed to a building. The faded sign said General Store. Let's look inside. Maybe the answer to the riddle is in there. Jack and Annie stepped onto the porch. The wooden boards creaked loudly. The door had fallen off its hinges. They peeked inside. The air was thick with dust. Spider webs hung from the ceiling. Maybe we shouldn't go in, said Jack. But what if the answer's here, said Annie. Let's just take a quick look. Jack took a deep breath. Okay. He and Annie tiptoed into the store. Look, said Annie. She picked up a pair of rusty spurs. Careful, said Jack. He poked at other stuff in the store, an old feed sack, a rusted tin can, a faded calendar dated 1878. Wow. Oh, wow, said Annie. She held up 2 cowboy hats. She put one on and handed the other one to Jack. For you. It's too dusty, said Jack. Just blow on it, said Annie. Jack blew on his hat. A cloud of dust rose up. Jack sneezed. Just try it on, said Annie. Jack put the hat on. It nearly covered his eyes. Boots, said Annie. She pointed to a row of cowboy boots on a shelf. There are even some small ones like our sizes. Here's a pair for you. She handed the boots to Jack. They're not ours, he said. I know, but just try them on, said Annie. Jack turned his boots upside down and shook them as hard as he could. What are you doing, Annie asked. Pulling on another pair of boots. Checking for scorpions, Jack said. Jack, Annie laughed. Try them on. Jack sighed. He pulled off his sneakers. Annie's kind of bossy, huh? He pushed his feet into the boots. He pushed and pushed. The boots were really stiff. Finally, he got his feet inside. Then he tried to walk. Ow, he said. Forget it. He started to pull off the boots. What's that, Annie said. Jack froze. Piano music, said Annie. Maybe it's the voice in the riddle. Come on. Jack threw his sneakers into his backpack and hobbled after Annie. Here's a picture from chapter 2. There's Jack and Annie trying on their boots and their hats. Oh, chapter 3 is called Player Piano. We'll save chapter 3 and 4 for tomorrow. All right, ready? Here's chapter 2's yes/no questions that Mom and Dad could help you answer. What was the rattling noise? Was it an old bell? Yes or no? Or was it a rattlesnake? Yes or no? And then question 2 is, what was Jack trying so hard to get on his feet? Is it boots? Yes or no? Or is it socks? Yes or no? I hope you guys enjoyed chapter 1 and chapter 2 so far of Ghost Town at Sundown. And I'll see you back tomorrow for chapters 3 and 4 so we can see what Jack and Annie are up to. Hope everyone's well. Have a good night. Bye.